Prosocial behavior. Background. The hungry female left the nest at dusk, and after hours of searching for food, finally found a good location and ate as much as she could. When she returned to the nest, another member of the group, unrelated to her but one of the many who spent time there, approached. Unsuccessful in her own search for food, this starving female begged, and the successful female quickly obliged, sharing some of her recent collection. This behavior is quite generous. Every calorie counts. There is no guarantee that the sharing female will find food again tomorrow night or the next, and she will not live for long without a meal. It might seem surprising that this rather heartening example of prosocial behavior should come from a species that strikes fear in many of us, owing in part to a connection with Bram Stoker's Dracula. The vampire bat, however, will readily share, through regurgitation, a recent blood meal taken from sleeping livestock or other animals. The bites do not kill the victim, but do leave a wound. There are over 1,000 species of bat, but only the vampire bats, consisting of 3 species, feed on blood, and their sharing behavior has been studied by Wilkinson, 1984, as a model of prosocial behavior. Why would any species demonstrate such a behavior? How could a behavior that clearly comes at a survival and reproductive cost be selected and transmitted across generations? Even Darwin was initially puzzled by prosocial behavior and expressed his concerns on the origin of species. Social insects like bees, for example, in which some members work only for the benefit of the hive and do not reproduce, were considered one special difficulty which first appeared to me insuperable and actually fatal to my theory. Darwin, 1859. Still, prosocial behavior can be seen across many different animal species, with one species in particular, humans, demonstrating a wide range of behavior aimed to benefit others, often from a very early age. Chapter plan. Biologists, psychologists, mathematicians, and economists have all examined the manner by which prosocial behavior can evolve. This chapter will consider many of these theories, and then discuss the various prosocial behaviors observed in animals and humans, including helping, sharing, comforting, and cooperation. There would likely be very few who would disagree that humans have a unique and ubiquitous suite of prosocial behaviors, despite our species' ability to engage in violence and immoral acts. Thus, many of the comparisons that will be considered in this chapter will be between the prosocial behaviors and the underlying cognitive mechanisms of humans and those of other animals. Evolution of prosocial behavior. If behaviors that lead to increased survival and reproductive success are behaviors that will evolve, then a question arises as to how a behavior that comes at a cost to the actor might ever take hold. How might self-interest be trumped by self-sacrifice, given the basic manner in which natural selection works? This section will focus on the proposals of many theorists across disciplines to explain how prosocial behavior could not only appear but actually flourish. The ideas stem at least from the mid-1800s and Darwin's writings, but even today some of the top science journals continue to publish new studies and accompanying theories. In subsequent sections, examples of animal behaviors that fit some of these models will be presented. Kin selection. In the 1960s, Hamilton, a biologist, considered the fact that a relative's offspring are part of an individual's reproductive fitness or contribution to the gene pool. Kin carry a subset of an individual's genes, and thus, Hamilton argued, prosocial behavior that increases the probability of the survival and reproduction of kin can further spread an individual's genes. Prosocial behavior toward relatives can thus evolve if reproductive success of the kin is enhanced enough to outweigh the cost to an individual's own reproductive success. Hamilton and also Price expressed this mathematically through a formula that considered inclusive fitness, which is simply a measure of an individual's fitness that takes into account his or her own offspring, direct fitness, and the offspring of relatives, indirect fitness. Of course, the amount that can contribute to an individual's fitness depends on just how closely related they are. An individual shares 50% of their genetic material with their own child, but less, 25%, with a nephew or niece, and thus Hamilton's formula includes a measure of the degree of relatedness. In sum, Hamilton's rule states that a prosocial behavior can evolve via natural selection if the benefit of the action in relation to the degree of shared genes is greater than the cost to an individual's own reproductive success. There are examples of animal behavior that fit the model, such as the case of sun-tailed monkeys, that show preference for kin, e.g., more affiliation and less aggression, and a bias that decreases with decreasing relatedness. Examples from everyday human experience suggest that we selectively help close kin, e.g., will tend to prescribe resources according to relatedness, and laboratory experiments concur. In one such study, participants were told that more money would be given to a relative the longer the participant held a painful skiing pose. Participants stayed in the position for longer durations if the recipients were siblings, and less if they were nieces, nephews, or cousins. As research progresses, it may actually be that some of the basic tenets of kin selection theory are altered. Some researchers like Nowak et al. Have argued that the predictions of Hamilton's rule almost never hold, in turn starting a lively debate in the literature. For now, the debate is ongoing, but it is important to keep in mind that Hamilton's model is only addressing one of Tinbergen's questions, namely, how prosocial behavior toward kin could evolve. It does not, however, address the more proximate questions of how the behavior could develop or what sensory and cognitive processes are required. It is unlikely that animals that engage in prosocial behavior toward kin are consciously calculating relatedness before making decisions, yet, as Chapter 9 details, many animal species have means of identifying kin, which is a necessary prerequisite for kin selection. Prosocial behavior toward non-kin. The evolution of prosocial behavior cannot be completely explained by kinship, since much of the observed behavior, both in humans and animals, is directed toward non-kin. In 1971, Trivers' seminal paper, The Evolution of Reciprocal Altruism, presented a solution to the puzzle of prosocial behavior. His proposal was that genes for these behaviors could be selected for if individuals do not indiscriminately act to benefit others, but instead direct prosocial behavior to those who have been prosocial themselves. Trivers' idea was presented using game theory, a mathematical study of simulated interactions between two or more individuals. In these simulations, the payoff to an individual is dependent on the actions of the other individual. Trivers' proposal was that the evolution of prosocial behavior could be modeled by a particular game called the prisoner's dilemma. The game is usually explained in terms of human behavior, but later in this chapter, animal behavior will be considered. Imagine a situation in which two criminal suspects are arrested, and the police wish to get a confession from at least one of them as a means of gathering enough information for conviction. The police offer each man separately the following deal. If you testify against the other man, defect, and the other man keeps quiet, acts to aid you, then you go free and the other man gets a 5-year prison sentence. If you both remain quiet, you'll each only get 1 year in prison. If you both rat out each other, then you'll each get a 3-year sentence. Figure 11.1 shows the payoffs for each possibility. Because each suspect individually receives the greatest payoff if he defects, then each should testify against the other. The dilemma is if they both defect, they actually receive more prison time than if they both aid each other by remaining quiet. Thus, here is a situation in which an animal or human will individually receive more payoff to defect, but two individuals will each do better when they both aid each other versus both defect. In sum, this game can model the evolution of prosocial behavior. One can also consider an iterated version of the prisoner's dilemma, in which individuals encounter each other repeatedly, as they often do in social groups. Now, the options are not just to aid or defect. Other strategies can be devised like, aid only if he aids me first, otherwise defect. In fact, Axelrod and Hamilton mathematically demonstrated that in iterated prisoner dilemma games, the most successful strategy is to aid the other person in the first encounter, then simply copy the moves that the partner makes, e.g., defect if they defect, in subsequent interactions. This strategy is commonly referred to as tit for tat, this or that, and demonstrates how the rewards for back and forth benefiting can come to outweigh defection. Figure 11.1, Payoff Matrix for a Prisoner's Dilemma game. The matrix presents a situation in which a player will individually receive more payoff to defect, but two individuals will each do better when they both aid each other versus both defect. Punishment. Since the proposal of the tit-for-tat strategy, researchers have elaborated on the manner in which individuals might aim to control individuals with whom they interact. One particularly interesting behavior is the fact that humans also engage in punitive behavior. We punish cheaters and freeloaders, and not simply by defecting at the next opportunity. For example, in another game, the ultimatum game, one player can give any part of an endowment of cash to a second player. This potential recipient, however, can choose whether to accept or reject the proposer's offer. If the recipient accepts, then the money is distributed accordingly. If the offer is rejected, neither player gets any money. In truth, the recipient should accept any offer except $0, because rejecting would lead to no monetary gain at all. Yet, when this game is played by people in many different countries all over the world, recipients typically reject offers of less than 20% of the proposer's endowment, meaning that neither proposer nor recipient gains any money. In section 11.4, applications of this game with chimpanzees will be discussed. Additionally, in versions in which a third person is able to spend some of his or her own endowment to punish a proposer for making a low offer to a recipient, the third person often pays to have the proposer's endowment reduced. Also see box 11.1. People seem to be willing to incur costs to punish others, even if they were not harmed themselves. Box 11.1. Reciprocity and punishment in the human brain. In recent years, the research field of neuroeconomics has been growing, representing the collaborative interdisciplinary efforts of biologists, psychologists, and economists. The general approach is to examine the neurological underpinnings of decisions such as those made in reciprocal altruism games. Most work has been completed using brain imaging via functional magnetic resonance imaging, fMRI. In one such study, participants played an iterated prisoner's dilemma game with an unknown partner in an adjacent room. All the while, the participant's brain activation was measured via functional MRI. When mutual prosociality occurred, i.e., neither player defected, strong activation of brain areas associated with reward, ventromedial orbitofrontal cortex, anterior cingulate cortex, caudate nucleus, and the nucleus accumbens were reported. In fact, the activation of these areas during mutual prosociality rivaled activation during situations in which the participant defected and the partner shared, which would lead to greater monetary reward for the participant. The researchers thus suggest that the activation of these brain areas reflects the rewarding effect of experiencing a mutually prosocial interaction. Additionally, areas including the caudate nucleus are activated during the punishment of cheaters or those who violate trust in an economic game. In the trust game, player A must trust player B to send money back after an exchange. If B fails to send the money back, A often punishes B, even if this action is costly to A. In fact, players often express that they enjoy punishing in this way, and the activation of reward areas of the brain during these actions concurs. Enhanced activation of these areas did not occur, however, when player A was told that player B did not have control over whether the money was sent back. In sum, neuroeconomic research is ongoing, and there is still much to learn, but even these early findings point to possible cognitive and emotional mechanisms that underlie prosocial behavior. Reputation and partner choice. The previous game theory scenarios are all cases in which partners are provided, not chosen. Yet, social interactions often are the result of active partner choice, and in these cases, the emphasis might not be on reacting to a cheating partner by cheating or punishing partner control, but by simply starting a new relationship with someone else, partner choice. Here, cheating becomes costly because of the lost opportunity to benefit from interactions. A general preference for trustworthy partners thus selects for prosocial behavior within a species. Relatedly, Nowak and Sigmund, 1998, have proposed that for humans, having the reputation of being a prosocial individual has its benefits. They propose that individuals who engage in prosocial behavior develop a reputation for doing so and will potentially be selected by others as interaction partners. Types of prosocial behavior. Thus far in this chapter, the term prosocial behavior has referred to instances of bats sharing a blood meal and humans sharing a monetary endowment. These two behaviors do have a similarity. Individuals with a material resource give some of that resource to individuals who are lacking, and both are actions that benefit another, prosocial. Other types of behavior besides sharing, however, fit under the heading of prosocial behavior, such as helping, comforting, and cooperation. In the sections that follow, we examine instances of prosocial behavior in animals and humans, and each of these types of prosocial behavior will be considered separately. Additionally, textbooks on animal behavior do not separate these types of prosocial behavior, but the present text will do so for two reasons. First, research on animal prosocial behavior has grown in the last 10 years, and innovative methodologies have captured different types of prosocial responses to others' needs. Second, research in developmental psychology that considers distinct varieties of other-oriented action like helping, comforting, and sharing has demonstrated unique ages of onset and distinct, uncorrelated developmental trajectories, suggesting that different prosocial behaviors may require different cognitive processes. As of now, the evolutionary models presented in section 11.1 are likely still valid across all types of prosocial behavior, and in particular, sharing. However, as the body of research grows, existing theory may be elaborated. One additional consideration is the use of the term cooperation. In many texts, this term is used in much the same way as the present text uses prosocial behavior. That is, cooperation is often used as a broad category that encompasses many types of behaviors that serve to benefit others. However, here the use of the term is reserved for instances in which two or more individuals act together to achieve a joint goal, such as multiple lions engaging in a hunt, or even amoeba joining together to move through substrates that an individual amoeba cannot traverse alone. Also see box 11.2. By limiting the use of the term, the door is open to theories from developmental psychology that consider the unique nature of human cooperation. Helping. In the field of developmental psychology, helping typically refers to behaviors that respond to an instrumental need, such as retrieving an out-of-reach object for someone, opening the door for someone whose hands are full, or even providing needed information. When the species under consideration is human, researchers often speak of the recognition of others' needs as the recognition that someone has a particular intention that is currently unachievable, e.g., wanting to obtain an out-of-reach object. As detailed in Chapter 10, however, it is not always clear whether other species recognize intentions and needs in this manner. Thus, this section will consider behaviors that function to assist others with certain instrumental needs. In most cases, authors may remain non-committal as to whether helpers are responding solely to stimuli in the environment and the behavioral states of others, e.g., an outreached hand toward a faraway object, or recognizing behavior states and also recognizing the intentions underlying those behavioral states, a goal to obtain the object. Many different species have been observed to engage in helping behavior, and the contexts in which it is seen vary widely. Two naturally occurring contexts will be considered here: mating, offspring care, and providing information, followed by consideration of experimental examinations of helping in the laboratory setting. Helping for mating and offspring care. Helping behaviors that serve to increase the reproductive success of others clearly have important benefits to the recipient. A particularly interesting example comes from a perhaps unexpected source, the slime mold. These single-cell amoeba often merge to form a fruiting body, which in turn produces spores. The amoeba that form the stalks of the fruiting bodies serve to help position other amoeba to produce spores while losing their own chance at reproduction. This system is also prone to cheaters, since some cells may avoid becoming part of the stalk and instead gain access to the fruiting body directly. Amoeba, however, may be able to keep cheating in check. In soil in the wild, a cell adhesion gene, CSAA, is necessary to get into the initial fruiting body formation. Thus, those with the CSAA gene are actually helping others with this gene, and cheaters, those without the gene, are left out of the formation. The cell adhesion gene is an example of a greenbeard gene, or a gene that codes for mechanisms that ultimately allow organisms to recognize a fellow prosocial individual. The term greenbeard gene comes from the anthropomorphic analogy that, at least for humans, one individual would easily notice a fellow green-bearded individual, though in general, noticing or recognizing a prosocial individual need not be the result of cognitive processes. Assisting in reproductive success is also seen in larger-brained species. In mammals, for example, behaviors have been observed in the wild that aid another individual's opportunity to mate with females. Often, this is done through the creation of alliances of males who help each other gain access to receptive females. Research by Packer, e.g. 1977, with olive baboons, illustrates this point. Males in contest with an opponent will sometimes enlist the help of another male by alternating looking between the opponent and the solicited male. If the opponent was consorting with a female, the coalition often results in the female leaving the opponent and approaching the soliciting male, resulting in a reproductive advantage. The enlisted male thus helped the other male to gain access to a female, but what, if any, benefits exist for helping? Packer reported that a system of reciprocity seems to be in place in which males who are aided by another male will be more likely to help the enlisted male in subsequent interactions.